إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight, we have the honor of celebrating the birth anniversary of our second holy Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali, alayhi salatu wassalam. It's conventional that whenever we celebrate or commemorate the life of any of the holy personalities, any of the ma'asumeen, or any of the anbiya, typically speakers like to focus on an aspect of their life, some of their fada'il, some of their features, some of their traits. Right? And with the Ahlul Bayt, there are usually specific traits that stick out to us, right? That we know that they are our role models, our greatest examples, and we look to them to see how we should be acting in this day and age as well too. So when it comes to seeing how, for example, we control our anger, people love to go and reference the life history of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. When we love to go and think about the idea of bravery, of shuja'ah, of course we go to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And there's many other characteristics. All the Ahlul Bayt possess them in equal, if not greater, in different amounts. One that is usually given focus when we talk about the second Imam is the idea of sadaqah and charity. Now, obviously, every single Imam has engaged in giving out constantly sadaqah and charity and helping those in their community that were not fortunate. What happens is there's a specific focus that some ulama give on Imam Hassan alayhi salam due to the details about his life, about how he gave, about how much he gave. So we thought that for tonight, inshallah, we'll share some of those riwayat and we'll see if we can have a discussion about how we can translate some of that to our modern day example as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A lot of times when we hear the fada'il of the Ahlul Bayt, something like this topic of sadaqah and charity, what sometimes happens is either we read a historical event, right, a famous piece in history where something happens and somebody shares the history, the riwayah of any of the imams, just giving somebody sadaqah and charity. Now, what exactly do we do when we take information like that? Right? The basic level is that it's supposed to encourage us that, okay, if they are our role models, they are the manifestations of Allah's names, they are our perfect guides, whenever we hear them do something, we should follow suit, right? That's obvious. But sometimes there's specific details in these narrations that we end up glossing over, we skip over, which are pretty important. And sometimes we don't even hear the details because on the minbar sometimes, or in history books, or in books of akhlaq, we only hear a few different types of narrations. So a lot of the narrations about charity will be somebody comes, a typical default template of a hadith. Someone comes to the imam, they tell them, I'm faqir, I'm miskeen, I need, and the imam gives them money, right? They give them something. That's the typical hadith that we hear. And that is a lot of them from various ma'asumeen, alayhimus salam. And they did this obviously over and over again. But for the questions that you and I have about sadaqah, things that people ask constantly, that maybe you and I have been questioning, but we've never actually found clarity, we have that kind of hadith is not going to solve the question. Let me give an example. Okay, so I hear these riwayat, the imam gives sadaqah, he gives charity. Okay, good, I have that idea in mind, it's good to give charity. I know the Quran emphasizes charity. I know that the Ahlul Bayt have done so. Now what happens? A typical person, you're here living in this Orlando area, we're driving down, we stop at an intersection, and what happens? Usually, in many places, you see individuals with signs, right? These cardboard signs with something written on them. Sometimes they have signs with their story or that they're homeless or something like that or what they're looking for. Sometimes they don't even have a sign, right? They just have maybe a cup or a bag or just asking for handouts or just standing at an intersection. So many times, I'm sure you've had the same question, and I have been asked about it constantly, right? What do I do when I get to that intersection? I know that sadaqah is a good thing. Okay, it's obvious, nobody can deny that. It's not even something that you necessarily need to be Muslim to understand. People know giving charity is good. Okay, fine. But remember, it's the details that matter. But I find myself face to face with this individual. They're asking for money. And what comes to my mind? I'm not thinking about the principles of the Ahlul Bayt, where they would pretty much give without asking, without condition. What comes to my mind is that, okay, this individual, like, I feel bad for them. I have pity for them, but I don't know what they're going to use this money for. Maybe they'll take this money that I give them and they'll go and buy some haram stuff, right? Whether it's haram food or, substances, illegal substances that they shouldn't be using. And then we start thinking about that, like, oh, maybe that's how they got on the street in the first place. Maybe they're addicted to these substances and that's how they are here. So if I give them any money and they go and buy that, I'll be feeding into that habit and that problem, so maybe I shouldn't give anything at all. Right? A lot of people think like that. Some, as a response to it, or in order to solve it, say, okay, maybe I'll give them food if I can. And I've heard people who have done this, where they've offered the individual, look, I can't give money, I can't give cash, but if you want, I can go pick up some food and bring it back to you. Sometimes a person might say yes, and sometimes they might say no, right? Sometimes people, what they do is they keep like a granola bar, like a bunch of granola bars or water bottles in their car. So as they drive by, they just hand it to them and see if those individuals want something like that. Now, that's a solution, sure, but it's not getting to the heart of the problem. Is this person, that dilemma, those questions that I'm asking, is that enough for me to withhold sadaqah and charity from somebody? Now, some of you might be saying, okay, they're not even Muslim. No, I think we know, hopefully from the life of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, that they gave to anybody regardless of their deen. Yes, to Muslims, especially to Shia, they get priority, but non-Muslims were getting sadaqah and getting taken care of by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam as well too. So that shouldn't be a question on our mind. The issue is that, should I give? And then even if I do decide to give, how much should I actually give? What exactly do I do in these situations? And these are the types of things that we have to be able to analyze more of the riwayat, especially the ones that are not really repeated too often from the minbar, right? Even if we go into some of the deeper fada'il of the second imam, there are some very specific narrations about how, especially the amount that he would give in charity. They say that multiple times throughout his life, whatever property he would have, he would divide it in half and then give the rest of that, give half away to people who were in need. He did this multiple times in his life. And there were twice in some reports, twice in his life where every single thing that he had in his home, all the wealth that he had possessed, he gave away to individuals. Now, again, another question comes up. Okay, the imams did this. Do I do something like that? The typical answer is no, right? This is probably more than most people can handle. There might be certain individuals in certain situations that, maybe if they're in like a Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos situation, okay, maybe they should be doing stuff like this. But I'm assuming most of us sitting here are not in those situations. Inshallah, maybe one day we are, and then we can have that conversation then. But for now, we have simple questions. This guy on the road, do I give him $5, $10, $20? Is that too much? Does it matter that I know that they might buy drugs or something? Like, what do I think about that? So let's look at an example from the life of the imam, and hopefully that'll give us at least some guidance. Now, I should offer a disclaimer too. In order to truly comprehend and analyze this kind of discussion, a simple 20-minute lecture is not going to really do it justice. I think hopefully you guys understand that. This is something that, for ulama at least, it requires a proper analysis, as we said, of all of the riwayat, the complete lifestyles of the Ahlul Bayt, every single time that they gave charity. We'd have to take all those riwayat, right, analyze them, kind of do a meta-analysis, couple it with the ayat of Quran about charity, and then also understand the socio-political factors there too. Right? It's not as simple as saying, well, they give like this, so I have to give the same way. Well, no. The reason would be, and again, just one reason amongst many, the idea of addiction to drugs and things like that is a prevalent thing in this society for many individuals who are out in the streets, right? Not all, but many who are there, yes, they happen to be addicted to drugs, and Sometimes if you give, there is a chance that they will go and buy drugs with it. So that is a reasonable, rational risk and idea and possibility in our minds. And that exists in this day and it exists in many other societies. In that time, in the Arab society, this wasn't an issue. People were not just asking for handouts and going and buying drugs with it, right? They weren't asking for handouts and going even buying alcohol, even though people did, minority did consume alcohol then, but there wouldn't be this level of addiction where they would have to beg on the street so that they could buy alcohol. Usually, 9 times out of 10 in that scenario in history, if somebody was asking, it was because they were actually in need. Generally speaking, there were a few exceptions, but that was the norm. So for us to bring that situation directly to this society is not going to work. So there has to be a bit more analysis that we'd have to do. So I just want to give that disclaimer because I don't want people I know people like practical solutions, right? But at the same time, to offer a proper practical solution takes a little bit more time and effort and research. Hopefully the points, and especially this hadith that we share, will at least get us to start thinking a bit differently about our paradigm and the framework that we use to go and determine what decisions we'll make when we go out there. Okay, let me share the hadith with you now. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So what we know from all the other riwayat, 70-80% of the ones that deal with the Ahlul Bayt giving charity, the Ahlul Bayt are not really asking anything. Person comes, they say, I'm in need, I know that you are this beloved household, we have these hajat, we have these needs, I'm faqir, I'm miskeen, and the Ahlul Bayt would just give, right? No questions asked. This hadith seems to fly in the face of that and now offers a different sort of behavior model of the imam, or imams in this sense. So, this hadith, and it's a longer one, so I'm skipping the Arabic. I'm sure you'll understand why. So, they say that one day Uthman, the third Khalifa, he was sitting next to a masjid. Then a faqir, a poor person, comes out, and the person approaches Uthman, and they ask him for some help. Right? He says, I'm in need, can you give me something? So Uthman gives him 5 dirhams. Now, I have to pause again here. Now, there's a lot of pauses and tangents and digressions, but it's necessary. When you hear somebody say that somebody gave another person 5 dirhams or 5 dinar, what does that mean to you and me? If it means, they gave him money, but do we understand what it means, dirham versus dinar? Do we understand the purchasing power back then versus what it would do right now? Again, this is more that's required for the research. If somebody's giving 1 dirham, 10 dirham, right? Or 1 dinar, 10 dinar, we need to have a value associated with that too. And that itself requires somebody with an understanding of not just economics and finance, but you have to understand historical economics and finance too. I'll give you a brief overview so you can understand. Hopefully next time you see a hadith or riwayah that talks about these numbers of dirham and dinar, maybe this will help out a little bit. So dirham and dinar. Dirham is a smaller value, dinar is the larger value. Dirham is using silver, dinar uses gold. And don't confuse it because some countries still to this day use dirham and dinar. That's a whole different thing. Forget that. We're talking about what they were using at this time. So dirham back then was about, again, these are all estimates, about 3 grams of silver, right? You put it into today's, do your conversions, purchasing power. 1 dirham, meaning 3 grams of silver, back then the value that it has was anywhere between $5 to maybe $20, maybe maximum like $50, something like that. So it's like pocket change, put it that way. It's enough for somebody to maybe buy like a meal, right? I know Sayyid Yusuf was saying that people are spending $100 on coffee. We know that that's not happening. Even the best coffee, which I'd like to drink, is not $100. But so this, 1 dirham is a small amount of money, right? It's pocket change. So when Uthman is giving 5 dirhams, it's a small amount of money. Maybe it gets a person a few meals, right? Nothing crazy, right? It's something that would make sense to you and I if we were to hand something out to somebody that we saw on the street or somebody in the community asks us. We might think of, all right, here's something that might help you for the rest of the day, right? Something like that, okay. Dinar has to do with gold. And again, difference of opinion about value. Generally speaking, they say dinar is about 6 grams or so of gold. So again, doing all our conversions, which I'm skipping the math to kind of save you for this. But if we apply today, it's about maybe somewhere between $50 to maybe $200-300. Something like that, right? So it's a couple $100. It's a bit more now, right? Now, if we're applying it back then to what was used then, a dinar would be okay typically for somebody to maybe survive for about a month, right? Something like that. Just like, right now, if we were to apply dollars right now, in a lot of other second/third world countries, if you take a couple $100s, that's pretty much enough to survive for a month, right? And a lot of these countries, even the ones with semi-failing economies, a couple $100s will help you out with rent over there right after you convert and everything. Rent and food and whatever you have, right? Okay. So again, think about it. 1 dirham, dirhams are like small amounts of money, typically what you keep in wallets, things like that. Dinar, those are big things, right? It's big amounts of money. Uthman's giving 5 dirhams. So a small amount of money, right? Here's a little bit of help for you. So what happens? So this faqir, he gets this money, and then he says, guide me, he tells Uthman, guide me towards someone who will give me more help. What a shot in the face to Uthman, right? It's like, okay, thanks, but no thanks. Like, I need a little bit more than this. This person's probably starving on the street. They ask for help, and all right, so they got maybe a meal or two. But he's like, I need a little bit more than that. There's a possibility that they're suffering a lot more, so they're probably looking for a bit more. Maybe they have a family to take care of. So he asks Uthman, okay, show me to somebody else who can help me more. Uthman then points that individual towards 3 individuals who were also there that were in the corner of the masjid. He said, go and speak to these individuals. So these 3 individuals were, number 1, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and their cousin Abdullah ibn Ja'far. Salawatu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So Uthman, he points all those individuals out. He doesn't name them, but he points them out. He says, go to those 3 individuals and go ask your need from them, right? See what happens. So the poor man goes to them, makes his request. So now, again, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, and Abdullah ibn Ja'far. So the 2 brothers and then the cousin. So in this scenario, in this hadith, we don't really have a background to know what time frame this is happening. But regardless, we know that Imam Hassan is the eldest. So if anything's going to happen, he's taking priority here. He's going to do the answering. So he's the one to respond to this poor person. He asks him. He doesn't just give him the money. He asks him. He says, asking others for financial help is only sahih and correct in 3 situations. This is different than many other riwayat. Okay. First situation. The first situation where it's correct to ask for financial assistance is if you need help to pay diya, blood money, when you are unable to do it yourself. Now, I don't want to go into a whole discussion about diya, blood money, but it happens in many situations. If we use the, let's say, equivalent right now of what happens with manslaughter, right? Somebody might accidentally hurt somebody or harm somebody or kill somebody, right, by accident. There's still some money that has to be paid to them, even in this society. So any sort of money like that is called diya. It's blood money, right? Whether it's for damage, for blood, for death, something like that happens. Diya is also, for example, something that has to be paid if a Muslim, God forbid, engages in abortion, right? It's something that would have to be paid. Even if they decide to do something which is a guna, it's a sin, they still have to pay blood money, right? And it would actually technically have to be paid by the doctor who engages in this practice and allows for it to happen. Okay. So that's the first one. Second one is what? Imam Hassan says the second situation that's correct to ask for assistance is if you have a crippling debt in which one has, and there's no means of paying it back other than having somebody else assist. So sometimes an individual, maybe they're okay kind of paycheck to paycheck, right? They've got their income, they're okay with that for their day-to-day monthly needs maybe, but they have outstanding debts. Sometimes you have individuals who, right, because brown parents have pushed them to medical school or to become a lawyer, things like this, they've got outstanding student debts. And some of these nice schools, they cost a lot of money. I know individuals who, right, 40s, nearly 50s, still paying off student loans, right? And it's very, very difficult, especially if they go to a very good school and you're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars of debt. It's not an easy thing to pay off. And even if somebody finds a decent job with all the other expenses, sometimes it becomes a very, very difficult thing to pay off. So this is one possible example. People sometimes get stuck in a bad mortgage with terrible interest rates. There's a lot of issues that can take place. So this is another situation the Imam saying, it's okay and proper over here to ask for financial assistance to help remove that. Now, there's a big conversation about this too. In our communities, we don't think about helping people with the debt. Our thing is that if somebody's dying on the floor, we'll give them $5, but that's it. We don't think about actually the fact that people who are stuck in car loans, student debt, mortgages, they need assistance too. And the fact that this can help compound and help everybody else with this exponential effect, we don't understand how it can work. There's a family or an individual, they're working hard, right, in their job, but they have this debt that's sitting there. If individuals or a society or institution can help pay that individual's mortgage off or their car loan or student loan, whatever it is, now that individual being debt-free has a little bit extra now on the side to help other people out, right? That's the idea. Rather than take all this maybe money that's going to constant loan payments, now they have something extra which they're hopefully going to use to help back give to the community and to the center, right? It's also interesting to think about this in terms of how khums is utilized as well too, right? Because khums right now, people think that it's just for centers, right? That's not the only reason it should be used. You have to think sometimes a little bit out of the box about how khums should be utilized properly for our societies. Last one. What's the third situation? The third situation is when you have a faqir, a poor person who has no means of making money for himself. Now, let me just define for you what faqir means. Faqir is somebody that, if we're analyzing them by their yearly expenditure, let's say for this individual, right, whatever their lifestyle happens to be, maybe for 1 year, if you take all their rent, their car, whatever it is, their expenses add up to maybe $50,000, right? And I know that's probably undershooting it by a lot, but just makes the numbers easier. $50,000 is to take care of themselves, and maybe they have 1 kid or something, right? A very, very cheap area they're living in. Obviously, it's $50,000 a year. And maybe they have a simple job, so their income's maybe $30,000, right, a year. So no matter what they do, because maybe that's the most that they can achieve given their intellectual ability, they can't find any other job, all they're making is $30K a year. So every single year, they're $20K in debt. They cannot make their expenses. So either they're loaning from people, they're borrowing, there has to be some way you make that $20K. Otherwise, you sacrifice your lifestyle, or it becomes difficult. So faqir is somebody who within their yearly expenditure, they cannot meet it. So it's different than having long-term debt, right? It's a bit different than the second example. This example is somebody can't even take care of themselves for a year. And also the Imam's mentioning the shart and the condition that they can't do something else to work. Sometimes there are people, and I've met individuals who are like this because of this new gig economy that exists. They want to take these jobs which makes them independent, which is fine. Independence is nice, right? They might do delivery or driving. That's cool, that's fine. But they are capable of doing something else. They could go out and do maybe a typical 9 to 5 or find other work, but they decide not to. Why? Because they cherish their own independence. In reality, they're not independent, right? Because they're enslaved to debt. But they think that they're independent because they get to sleep in a little bit more. They get to drive around, do whatever they want pretty much, right? That's not real independence, by the way. But this individual would not fall on this criteria because the Imam's saying that they have no ability to do anything else, right? That's the difference over here. So you can think about people, again, maybe they have a physical disability or a mental disability, right? Any of those situations where they're unable to find and do any other kind of work. So now that the Imam mentions the 3 conditions, then Imam asks this person, may I ask if one of these situations has occurred for you? So the man replies, right? Actually, yes, my problem is one of these 3 things. This is a small little note too. Interestingly, in order to save his own face, which I'm sure the Imam knew that this person would do it, he doesn't mention which situation it is. And the Imam probably doesn't want to know exactly the situation. He just wants to know, hey, do you meet any of these criteria or not? Right? Because obviously this is, when somebody has to explain themselves that I am faqir, or I'm in debt, or I have to pay blood money, this is obviously going to take away your izzah, your dignity. So alhamdulillah that this person was wise enough to protect themselves to some degree. Sometimes it's a good idea for us too. When people come to us with a haja, with a need, a desire, don't ask for too many details. Don't make them lower themselves like that in front of you, right? We're not these kings. We're not the IRS to make people feel so bad, right? Like this. If somebody has a need, we should at least take them at their word to some degree and help out wherever we can, inshallah. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, now, once the person answers, then okay, now it's time for the Imam to pay, right? Now he's going to give him money. So now, go back. Uthman had given the individual, how much? 5 dirhams, which even if we're being extra liberal with it, was maximum about $250 or so, something like that, maybe, right? I said that was pocket change, basically, right? Maybe to help him for a day or two, a couple days, max a week, something like that. We said dinar is the much more valuable one, right? That's a lot more money, right? So 1 dinar can probably take care of you for like a month or so, right? Something like that. So what does Imam Hassan do? Imam Hassan gives this man, not dirham, he gives him dinars. Not just 1 or 2 dinars, he gives him 50 dinars. 50 dinar. Again, even with a very conservative estimate, about years, at least a couple years worth of money this man he's just been given. And that's not it. Once Imam Hassan alayhi salam gives him 50 dinar, Imam Hussein alayhi salam then comes to him and gives him 49 dinar. After Abdullah bin Ja'far sees Imam Hassan and Hussein give 50 and 49 dinar respectively, Abdullah bin Ja'far, gives him 48 dinar. There's another interesting point to bring out here too. Hussein, recognizing his older brother has more authority, right? He says, I'm not going to outdo my brother. I'm not even going to go to the same level as him. I'll at least give 1 dinar less than him. Abdullah bin Ja'far, out of respect for his cousins who have more authority and power over him, what does he do? He says, I can't give as much as them, so I have to give 1 less than Imam Hussein as well too. So he gives 48. Interesting way that even in some actions like this, you see how people preserve each other's dignity and izzah, and they understand the maqam of the Ahlul Bayt. Okay, so this guy now is loaded. He's doing pretty well now, alhamdulillah. He goes from being obviously extremely in debt to now walking away with years worth of money. It's a huge, huge deal, right? So now the man leaves the masjid. He passes by Uthman again. And Uthman asks him, hey, so what happened? Right? What happened to your situation? And the man says, I asked you for money and you gave it to me, but you didn't ask me what the money was for. When I went to those 3 individuals, one of them asked me what the reason was behind my request, and I gave him the answer. Then all 3 of them gave me this large amount of money. And Uthman said to the man, that this family is the center of ilm and hikmah, and they are the fountainhead of khair and fada'il. Is it possible to find anyone that's equal to them? Right? Now, these are some of the narrations that some people don't like, but this is a very, very beautiful narration. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I think she's telling me to wrap it up. Yeah, I'll wrap it up, don't worry, no problem. So this is just, again, one example of a hadith that's conditional, whereas you don't find many riwayat like this. And again, I didn't share many other ones, but for example, because you've heard these before, I didn't want to go through all of these. There's other instances where somebody comes, Imam Hassan alayhi salam goes and he sees an individual on the street just praying for, he said, okay, she's fine. And just praying for 10,000 dirham. By himself, praying for 10,000 dirham, right? Imam Hassan just hears the dua, tells one of his servants, hey, go send that person 10,000 dirham. That's it. I'm telling you, I'm wrapping up, don't worry, it's almost done. Some people turn off the light, some people cut the mic, some people knock off the microphone, alhamdulillah. It's okay. So there, all the Imam had to do is hear the person's request, and before that individual was forced to go and ask other people, right? His dua was with Allah first. And this is another point for us to remember too. We should never let somebody get to the level where they have to, again, lower their izzah and their dignity and come and ask somebody. We should be self-aware and communally aware enough where we know people's situations. If we're going to call each other brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman and community and this and that, I should know if somebody is having trouble, right, with their business, if they're having trouble at their job, they didn't get a promotion, that their expenses have increased, or maybe they lost their job. If we're connected enough, we should know these kind of things. And if I know that, then I should figure out smart, creative ways to be able to take care of individuals. It doesn't make sense to come to somebody and say, hey, I know that you're poor, so here's $100. That's not going to make somebody feel good, right? Or again, we don't want somebody to come to us, I'm waiting for you to ask me. And once you ask, then I'll give to you. We shouldn't put somebody in that situation where they feel dhaleel, right? Where they feel just denigrated and destroyed like that. So we want to raise people's izzah by giving them gifts, or there's different ways. I'm sure you guys are wise enough and smart enough to figure out how you can take care of individuals. So hopefully when we think about this, and maybe if we have time in another situation, we can talk a bit more about this topic. The Ahlul Bayt, when they were giving out sadaqah, they weren't taking care of people for like a day or a week. They were completely changing people's socioeconomic status. This individual who had almost nothing, crippling debt, whatever his issue was, went from having 0 to now being okay for years. That's pretty wealthy now. There are many other riwayat and other stories where the Ahlul Bayt have taken care of individuals, and because of the sadaqah that they give, they make those individuals the wealthiest people in the city. We have multiple examples of this. Usually we don't do that. The way we give sadaqah is we keep people in their economic class. If they're lower class and they're constantly in need, we keep them paycheck to paycheck or month by month. The way sadaqah was done by the Ahlul Bayt, and again, not everybody's in this situation, I understand, but as a community, it's something that we should be able to work towards, is that we should be able to take somebody from a lower economic status and figure out ways to actually make them be upper class if possible. Whether it's through empowering them, making them entrepreneurs, whether it's the actual wealth, skill sets, jobs, there's many other ways to do that. But it's better for us to break out of the system of, here's 5, 10, $100. Like, I did my duty, pat myself on the back, Allah loves me now. Yeah, you did something good, no doubt. But it's not following in the direct example of the Ahlul Bayt. What we are doing is maybe 0.01% of the example that they've left. As we celebrate the birth of our Imam tonight, let's make dua, and hopefully, inshallah, we can try a little bit more to live his example, just like the rest of the Ahlul Bayt, and we can give that type of sadaqah where we actually make a real difference in somebody's life, not just for a day or a week or a month, but for years and years and years, inshallah ta'ala. Before I end, a few people had asked, I do still have a few copies of these books if anybody's interested. Again, the board book set for Baby's First Words is $20. If you want more information, you can talk to me afterwards, inshallah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.